Thank you.
Hi, this is Valerie Thompson-Arsenault from WoodGreen. So our project was focused on improving how we identify symptoms of depression among our senior clients. Next slide, please. Okay, so our team was mostly frontline staff. We had 4 social workers who are really leading the PDSA that we decided to do. And then we had Rochelle, who is she's a mental health services manager. And then we're very fortunate to have Rebecca, who is a business intelligence lead, and she works pretty much exclusively in WoodGreen's community care unit. WoodGreen is a large organization. We serve around 14,000 seniors just through our community care unit, and then we also have other services such as employment, child care, immigration services. So we're very fortunate to have this resource dedicated to CCU. That was a huge help. And then our project sponsor was Ashna Rahim, who's the VP of CCU, and then Julia, the director, was kind of the stand-in for Ashna when she was unavailable. Next slide, please. So essentially the impetus for this project was that we're finding we have a lot of challenges serving seniors who present with multiple mental health, cognitive, addictions issues. And in particular, we were finding that there were some gaps in how we're able to identify symptoms of depression for that population, which was leading to kind of delays in getting them to access appropriate services. Additionally, with the client population that we serve, a lot of them are dealing with very time-sensitive issues such as like financial, social, housing in particular, and that usually takes precedence over identifying depression symptoms and dealing with that. So we wanted to prioritize this. We decided to do this project as well because HQO has just released a service standard on major depression, and although that's really applicable to primary care, the very first part of that standard was looking at identification, which usually we're kind of the first point of contact for a lot of seniors living in the community, and we're the people who will prompt them to go to primary care to deal with depression symptoms. WoodGreen is also running one of Toronto's only walk-in counseling services, and we get a wide array of clients through that service, including senior clients. And so our hope is to link this QI project to that service and to improve how all of our staff at every level can really start to drive this in the community. Next slide, please. So again, the problem statement, senior clients enrolled in the social work program with suspected depression do not always engage in an assessment process to identify their symptoms. This impacts staff's ability to develop a comprehensive care plan with the client. And then the aim statement, the aim of this project is to identify clients within the social work team with depression symptoms using the PHQ-9 clinical assessment tool and to achieve a 50% assessment completion rate and develop a plan of care for those clients by August 31st. So we decided to start this QI project in our social work team because they're probably the best positioned team with the best kind of clinical knowledge to see whether or not the tool that we chose is appropriate for the population that we're trying to serve. And I'll get into what the PHQ-9 is in a little bit. Next slide, please. Okay. So one of the earliest root cause analysis tools that we used was the process map. And so we did this with representatives from not only just the social work team, but from other departments as well. And this was at the earliest stage in the project when we were really trying to identify what needed to change. And so we essentially mapped out the intake, waitlist, and assessment, and then care planning journey. And we were unable to get a client to participate in the process mapping exercise, but we did have a huge range of staff, and we felt that we were very successful in kind of getting down to the nitty-gritty. The whole process took, like, I think it was 2 hours, and it was very detailed, and it was very illuminating. Some of the QI issues that we identified were really around wait time from the client perspective, and risks to the client's mental health during that wait time, and then also really getting down to how the current assessment tools, which were the inter-RI tools, are not either being used appropriately or just not appropriate for what we're trying to achieve. And as well, we have an intake tool, which we did build in-house, and we discussed that as well as an option for QI. But really, when it came down to it, our intake process is not very clinical. It's more of a triaging process, and so we decided that it wasn't appropriate to focus on the point of intake. Next slide, please. So some of the root causes that we identified, and this was through the process mapping and then also through the fishbone exercise. So we talked about stigma and self-reporting among seniors who may see this as just a natural part of aging. We talked about clients have other issues that kind of take precedence over depression. Staff time was a big one. Intake and assessment questions were not being properly framed, or the tools were inappropriate, and the inter-RI tools didn't differentiate between situational, clinical, and major depression. And then we also talked about the social determinants of health and how that usually kind of drives the social work conversation. So those are some of the root causes that we identified. And so the tool that we chose, no, that's okay, you can go to the next slide, please. So the tool that we chose, the PHQ-9, deals with a lot of those root causes, and that's kind of why we chose it. And essentially what we were trying to do is find a tool that complemented our existing tools, so the inter-RI screener and CHA, and then also our intake tool, which we use not just for social work, but for all of our CCU programs. So that tool is kind of a less in-depth tool. So you can go to the next slide, please. So the PHQ-9, it's a validated tool that's used primarily in primary care and places like CAMH. And so it's a very patient-centered tool, which is what we found. And it has two versions. So there's actually the PHQ-2, which is the first two questions. And then the 9 is the full tool. And sometimes you can do the first two questions, which will prompt the full tool, or you can just do the PHQ-9. And it asks about nine depression symptoms and frames it in terms of clients self-reporting on those symptoms for the last 2 weeks. And so it's really designed to engage clients in a more organic discussion, and it's designed to kind of support the discussions that social workers are already having with clients. We found it to be much more in-depth than the inter-RI tools, which just simply ask clients about depression. And then also, again, so it aligns with primary care practices and kind of the existing best practices out there. And that's part of the reason that why we're looking at it, was because we wanted to use this QI opportunity to focus on future future integration of practices with our partners, we work really closely with hospital and with primary care. And we also have a visiting physician who sees a lot of our clients, and he hotels on site. And
Dr. Randy and Dr. Hoffman.
We actually have two, visiting physicians. And then, so how the tool works is it scores people based on mild, moderate, or severe, and then prompts action planning and further monitoring and follow-up. The tool is not meant for social workers to diagnose depression. It's meant to recognize the symptoms, create action plans, and then those action plans would then be would include referral to primary care to get a proper diagnosis.
You said it all. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Pretty much what we would do.
Yeah. So I have just here with me, just really quick, I have Elizabeth and Stephanie, who are two of the social workers. They were part of they were really leading the PDSA on the front line. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so part of this as well was to look at integrating this as a mobile app. So Rebecca, who was the business intelligence person on the team, she built the tool out to be a Power App, which is a Microsoft program, and it's compatible with our social workers' phones and tablets, so they can use it in the community, and then data is automatically fed up into our database. So that was something that we really felt needed to be included in order to get the full benefit of this tool. And it really depends on the situation. A lot of times, sometimes pen and paper is better, but sometimes you just need to be able to have access to the tool as quickly as possible, and it helps keep things organized, and there's less administrative work as well in terms of data entry and then uploading the assessments to the client's file. Next slide, please. So just in summary, so the change idea was to pilot the PHQ-9 with the social work team. As part of the pilot, we integrated opportunities to capture and report back on client feedback on the tool, which clients were able to share back with the social workers while they were filling out the tool. We set flexible targets in terms of assessments completed, and the point of that was to focus on really the quality of the work and making sure that social workers had time to assess whether or not the assessment was appropriate for our team instead of quantity. And we actually succeeded our target in terms of getting clients to positively engage with the tool. We only thought that around 50% of attempts would result in a completed tool, but actually it's closer to 64%. And that was in part because social workers were able to kind of determine exclusion criteria for clients who would be appropriate for this tool. So next steps, we'll be finalizing a tip sheet of best practices, which we're going to be sharing with other teams in our organization. We have several other mental health teams that work with specific client populations, and most of them work with seniors. And then we're going to be doing a broader rollout within those teams, and that will be starting in October. So just like how it went. Okay. So I have Stephanie here, and she's just going to talk about kind of like her experience in using the tool and also getting client feedback on the tool.
Hi. So I did use the tool with two of my clients who were currently having some challenges with things like housing and their physical health. And the tool kind of, when I used it, helped to put things in perspective for both of the clients in terms of understanding maybe, how they're feeling and why they're feeling the way they are, and what's contributing to their lack of engagement with like friends and family and things like that. So they start to gain a better understanding of how the situation had been impacting their mental health. From there, we are working to develop a plan of action so that we can start to address basically the situational depression that they're experiencing. And that's pretty much where we are, where I am with the clients that I've used the tool on. So, Elizabeth, I don't know if you have anything to add.
So in comparison, this tool in comparison to the Inter-Eye CHA or the HC that the LIN would do, the huge difference is that the CHA or the HC, it captures the picture is within the last 3 days. In terms of depression, it's really it really just gives a very minute snapshot and sort of a yes and no. It may, if someone says yes to symptoms of depression, it may trigger another assessment, a mental health assessment, and that might go a bit more in depth, but it's not specific to depression. So in conjunction of the CHA, if there are concerns about depression, whether it's situational or otherwise, it could be like a major depression and otherwise, this tool helps to encapsulate the exact symptoms someone's experiencing, but in this tool, it captures the last 2 weeks, which I think offers kind of much more, it's a bit more of an accurate depiction of where someone is right now, because it can be kind of a chronic or the symptoms can kind of change over time. So 2 weeks, I think, is a much better kind of time frame than 3 days, and it can help. The results from this can help us have a conversation around the symptoms and kind of next steps in terms of how they wanted to manage this, and it kind of helps the client and myself to have a conversation around depression, just with the language. So it helps them sometimes to identify these symptoms because often they may not be able to differentiate. Like, is this pure fatigue or is there something else going on? Mm-hmm. So it helps to have a conversation around next steps.
Okay, so some of the challenges, in addition to what was just said, was that there were some clients who were not as engaged with the tool. One client gave feedback that the tool was clinical. And then another challenge that is still ongoing is the team is still developing exclusion criteria, especially for clients who have cognitive issues or who may be dealing with other types of challenges, and it's not appropriate. There was an instance where it was brought up that the tool just might pose a risk to actually worsening the symptoms with the client who is in a very vulnerable place. So that, although it's situational, we're working on kind of best practices around developing that criteria. Yeah, okay, next slide, please. So in terms of lessons learned, really just the development of best practices and kind of being able to adopt this tool that so far has been helpful in terms of the social work practice, and then also just improving the care that we can provide for our clients, and bringing some rigor to how the entire organization starts to identify and help treat depression, because this obviously the condition is not unique to the social work team. We have a wide range of programs, including Meals on Wheels and transportation. So they're more light touch programs, and this tool, it has the PHQ-2 version, which we are hoping to adopt for some of those other programs that have staff that don't have that clinical expertise, and just to be able to better serve our clients in that respect. And then again, integration with primary care and introducing a mobile option. And the factors enabling our project success were definitely the staff engagement and just staff being willing to drive this at the ground level, and also sharing with each other their challenges and their best practices, and then also really getting clients to provide their feedback on the tool was very helpful as well. Next slide, please. Oh, this is just a quote from another social worker, Taz, who is not here today. And she's just saying that how useful the tool was in terms of engaging a client or two of her clients in a real conversation. And again, as we just heard, it is helpful because it's more in depth, and it also opens a conversation about recognizing symptoms as opposed to talking about whether or not you are depressed, which is really helpful for our population, in particular for seniors, because the biggest challenge that we're finding is generally seniors aren't able to distinguish symptoms of depression with, natural progression of aging, and that has a lot to do with how our society kind of treats this issue. Next slide, please. So in terms of doing differently, we might have given more time to complete the number of assessments that we had originally targeted, and we did have to kind of be more flexible in our goals. And then what we're going to be doing now is rolling out to our other teams, increasing our integration with primary care, and then potentially looking at adopting this for walk-in counseling. Next slide, please. And so this is just our planned phased rollout within the organization, and then we're going to be finalizing our best practice tip sheet and sharing that more broadly next spring with other community agencies who are interested in also adopting the PHQ-9 in their practice. And that's it. That's everything. Thank you.
Thanks so much. It's Mike, and I'll admit I have not been involved in this project at all. It's under Debbie's purview. So this has been very educational in being able to hear about the work you've done, and quite innovative, especially given the quality standards that you mentioned around major depression. So fantastic work. One question, and again, I apologize because I don't know that much about the project. You mentioned the client experience, and that you said in one of your challenges that some clients were less engaged or even resistant to the assessment. Has that been something that you've formally been measuring along the process as a balancing measure, that client experience aspect?
Yeah, we have been. Elizabeth, do you want to speak to that? Because you have.
Yeah, so we are keeping tabs on sort of the client experience generally, so who's engaging in them, who's refusing to do them, clients' feedback about the tools that we try, whether they agree or not to do it. We try to ask them sort of, what do you think about it? Do you like it? Do you not like it? What do you like about it? And so forth. And so we're keeping track of that feedback. And so I think that's useful for sort of next steps and ongoing. Because with my team in particularly, we're sort of we're a particular team in that we're geriatric, but we're psychogeriatric, mental health and addiction. So I think the feedback and the participation rates will I think the 50% is probably like I think we all agree that's a good goal, because we often our client population often are coping with cognitive and psychiatric issues often, and that doesn't necessarily mean that. So I think we're still trying to cement the exclusion criteria. At the same time, so we certainly have a group of folks who will not be able to engage, and then obviously there are a lot of folks who can. So yeah, we are keeping track of feedback and that sort of thing.
Hi.
Great, thanks so much.
It's Debbie. So congratulations with your project. I think the other thing that we talked about last time was about the level of depression that's being identified with the tool, and that next step of creating an action plan with the clients and how that's going.
So I've had some clients, for example, the outcome, say is a minor depression or moderate. For some folks, it gives us a platform to talk about. So, for example, there's a situational depression. For some folks, it may or may not, or just to have a conversation around, like, is it situational? Like, what do we think is situational? Do we think it's more of a chronic thing? And that might prompt conversation around, do you want to engage with primary care about this? And so for some folks, that's yes, and for some folks, that's a no. Mm-hmm. My experience is that with folks, it's generally, the results for me have generally been a minor or moderate for me. So for some folks, it's less a conversation with the GP, and in some situations, they just knowing this and to be able to identify it as helpful, but they did not want to move forward in terms of engaging with another person in a circle of care. However, it's something we can go back to. So my role, like I guess the goal, the outcome from that is, for me, it would be a monitoring. And for some folks, it's maybe a readiness thing, and so it gives us the opportunity to have a conversation at that minimum.
And I think for clients who have engaged with their family physician already over the issue of depression or symptoms of depression, it's also finding other things that they can engage with if they're feeling isolated, or if they feel like they need to make a connection with somebody. So, for example, one of my clients, we talked about volunteering and getting back to things that he enjoys doing, such as engaging, other seniors, running groups and things like that. So those are some of the goals that we've established and we're working towards as a way of kind of combating some of the symptoms.
Yeah, I think that was one of the most impressive things about the use of the tool and finding out that it really was identifying places to begin a conversation and those next steps that the social work team has taken to support that client, however they're willing to be supported. But you've got it on your radar, and there is an intention to make life better for that client group. It's nice work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deb.
I'm not seeing any questions on the board. Does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
So is the PHQ-9 part of the quality standard?
So Valerie, did you
repeat
have
that question louder?
Oh, sorry. Is the PHQ-9 part of the depression quality standards?
No, it's not. But it's a widely used and validated primary care clinical tool, though.
Okay. Okay, are we ready to go on to the last part?